Hey everybody, Mo here. Today we're talking about some recent SEC filings made by Trulieve, a research report by New Frontier Data, an interesting article about the Florida market, which I thought had some good insights, sales in Michigan for the month of August, and a follow-up about the Safe Banking Act and the NDAA. Welcome to the Monday, September 20th edition of Mary Jane Markets, a show covering the developing news of the North American cannabis sector every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or thereabouts. I also analyze a few of its operators: Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, and Trulieve. As usual, we start by taking a look at the stock prices of a few ETFs and our companies. And I also have the broader market indexes, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ there as a backdrop. And as you can see, and as you've probably seen in your own portfolios and in the financial markets news today, it was a really bloody day with some troubling news coming out of China, which has sort of rippled out into their economy, and that's rippled out into the global economy. I don't want to go into that. This isn't that kind of investment podcast. I'm not even going to pretend to understand the intricacies of that situation, but wanted to provide you with that context as to why the entire market dipped today. First up, I have for you today a report from New Frontier Data titled The Global Cannabis Report, Growth and Trends Through 2025. If you're not familiar with New Frontier Data, this is an analytics and research company, and they're one of the few that do reports in this space. So this came out on September 15th, and it's quite thought-provoking. On this show, we talk about the North American market, and I really focus on the US. And that's for a number of reasons. First of all, I live here. It's the one I'm most familiar with. I get to observe it firsthand as it develops. And it's the one that I think I can competently analyze and invest in. So this show is going to continue focusing on the North American market, but it's of interest to think globally from time to time. And a report of this breadth isn't a normal occurrence, at least not in this sector. So I thought I would bring it up and we can talk about it. If I haven't mentioned yet, but it's probably really clear from the title, the New Frontier report looks at the global market. So as they say here, oh, that's funny. They say here that they analyzed data from 217 countries. I always thought that there were 195 or 199 countries, depending on who you ask. So I wonder where they found those extra 18 countries. Anyway, they performed a global analysis, and they also provide some models here spanning 24 countries, they say. And we'll look at some of the report in a second, but they do list the 3 key findings from the report here in the press release, so we can go over those here. I'm going to try and zoom in. Hopefully that's a little easier on the eyes. So first point here, they say that global sales of high THC product through legal regulated sources totaled $23.7 billion in 2020. There's some important adjectives there. Global high THC legal sales were $23.7 billion in 2020, with the US alone accounting for $20.3 billion. So I wouldn't interpret this as the US market dwarfing the rest of the world in sales, but rather that most of the legal regulated sales are occurring in the US, which is still a significant statement to make given how fragmented and seemingly slow the federal policies we've been talking about on this show are progressing. Finding number 2, they say that building on expanding legal access and strong consumer demand, sales in currently legal markets are forecast to exceed $50 billion by 2025. So again, they're speaking globally here. And I can't back that number up with any of my own analysis. I am projecting that by 2025, the US's legal market will be around $40 billion. I covered this more in depth in my very first episode on the market landscape, but given that the US in 2025 is going to be 40 billion, or at least I'm projecting that it's going to be 40 billion, And what we just talked about with point one, I don't think 50 billion's unreasonable for legal sales in the global market by 2025. And then point number 3 is the most interesting and admittedly the one that I know the least about, but they say that globally, total consumer spending on legal and illicit high THC product is projected to grow from $415 billion in 2020 to $496 billion by 2025, which implies a cumulative average growth rate of 3.6%. And they're saying that that's going to be driven by expansion of legal country markets and increasing social acceptance of the plant's therapeutic value. Also wanted to go over key trends here, but I'm rethinking that just because of how long I want these episodes to be, but I'll leave this up on the screen and you can pause it if you would like to read those. You can also go here to info.newfrontierdata.com/global-report-2021. That's going to take you to this link, and then you just have to fill out some basic information here, and then it'll let you download the report. And when you open it up, this is what it looks like. 123 pages. I haven't read all of it, but I'm planning on chipping away at it through the week. Just to give you guys an overview of what's in here, they provide a global overview as well as look at a few key regions. This seems to be a very well put together report. So as I alluded to earlier, and I think I mentioned this in my very first episode too, legalization either through medicinal or recreational means is definitely the exception and not the norm across the world. As you can see here, this is a really cool graphic. Here's another cool graphic down here. So this shows the growth of the legal and the illicit market in one chart. And I'm sorry if I keep harping on this, but when I see stuff like this side by side, whenever I see this huge gap, all I see is opportunity. There's just so much demand out there being serviced by the black market, and this is all opportunity for our operators to come in here and convert these sales. All right, I don't want to go into this any further. I could probably make a lengthy episode on just this report. Next up, I wanted to go over this Forbes article that came out on the 17th that broad strokes the Florida market. So let's orient ourselves here. Florida is a medicinal-only state. They had sales of around $1.2 billion last year. I think that would make them the largest medicinal market. Definitely top 4 overall. I think there were 4 key things in this article. First being that Florida has become sort of this battleground state, and they bring up all of the major companies that are operating or have entered the state. Trulieve obviously being the juggernaut with over 50% market share. And then you also have all of the usual suspects, Cresco, Curaleaf, obviously Trulieve, but GTI as well. The second point that I wanted to touch on was on prices. And we've talked about this on this show before, and I've expressed my opinion that cannabis is a commodity. And what's going to happen when you have indistinguishable or very similar products on the market? Well, I'll just read this quote from Brady Cobb, who was the owner of Bluma Wellness, which we know was bought up by Cresco. And this is a first-hand account of that market. There's a race to the bottom from a pricing standpoint as these companies try to get consumers in the store. And I expect that this is a trend that's going to continue, not only because this is the nature of how commodities work, or rather how commodities prices behave in an open market, but also because in order for illicit sales to convert into legal sales, prices are going to have to come down. So I very much think this is going to be a longer term trend, and I hope to create an entire episode on this, all about what commodities are, if cannabis is a commodity, and how that affects operators. All right, next tidbit I wanted to talk about, because I don't think we've mentioned it on this show yet, is a roadmap for recreational. So as you may have heard earlier in the year, the question was removed from the ballot back in April. So the next likely opportunity for the state to flip would be in 2024. And then I sort of laugh at this statement that an adult use market could double the size of the market in Florida. And this is exciting And I personally think that's a very large underestimate. If we hop over to my market landscape spreadsheet, I am estimating that the potential market in the state of Florida to be $7.7 billion. All right, my next topic comes from the state of Michigan, where they published the August monthly report. So all kinds of data in this report. I'm going to jump down to what I find interesting: sales. So this is for their medicinal program. In the month of August, they sold $40 million product. And if I hop down to their adult use program, and I think this is a typo here because they do have the August 1st to August 31st heading, but they're reporting sales here for the month of 125.5 million. So in total, that's 165.5 million in sales in the month of August. I'd like to hop over to this new Cannabis Ventures article here. They have a couple cool charts. So this is a 52% year-over-year growth. And there's really nothing new here to say that we haven't said about other states as they've reported their sales. Every state we've looked at has had great year-over-year sales, but things are ticking down all across the US. And we've attributed this a little bit to seasonality, but also as the country opens back up, people are shifting away from buying goods to buying services. Another very cool chart, I think we saw something similar when we looked at Arizona. You can see the trend between medical and adult use, medical in blue here and adult use in orange. A majority of the sales growth here in Michigan as well as in other states is being driven primarily by adult use sales, while medicinal has tended to stay flat. So this is all part of due diligence, checking in on these states, noticing these trends state to state. We can sort of extrapolate that this is what's happening across the US, build that into earnings projections, as well as, of course, the trend in prices we just talked about in Florida. It's occurring here in Michigan as well. So per pound cost of flower in Michigan has fallen from $8,000, nearly $8,000 in January of 2020 to less than half of that, $4,000 in August of 2021. These are all things to file away as investors. I think the implications on earnings when you're selling something for $8,000 versus $4,000 are obvious. All right, following up on our discussion of the Safe Banking Act as an amendment to the NDAA from the last episode, the House Rules Committee is meeting today, Monday, September 20th. And I was sort of waiting to record this episode until I heard some news coming out from this committee, but as of yet, I have not heard anything. Like we talked about, there's a whole lot of amendments for them to review, and this could even get pushed to tomorrow. All right, shifting over to the only company-specific news I have for you. This is about new forms filed by Trulieve with the SEC. So I want to go over this Form 4 here first, and then this 8K is related. It gives some context to this form we're about to look at. So this is a Form 4 filed with the SEC stating that there have been material changes in the ownership of the company by one Kim Rivers. If you don't know by now, Kim Rivers is the president and CEO of Trulieve. So this was filed on September 15th. Not sure if you can make this out on your screen. All right, I tried zooming in, but I can't fit it all on the screen at the same time. Anyway, all right, so the type of security this is of course subordinate voting shares. We talked last episode that this is now the only class of share outstanding for Trulieve. Not sure if you'll be able to make this out, but under the transaction code, this is A for acquire. And there is a little asterisk here that links to the explanation, which says that this represents a grant of RSUs, restricted stock units. We'll talk about that when we look at the 8K. So this is 2,285,178 RSUs that were awarded So let's just flip over to the 8K. This was filed the same day, September 15th. If I scroll down to the pertinent section here, and I'm going to zoom in here and I'll read this to you. It says, on September 15th, Trulieve entered into a restricted share unit award agreement with each of Ms. Rivers and Mr. Purnell. He's part of the company's senior leadership team. So real quickly about restricted share units, RSUs, if you don't know, is a form of stock-based compensation. So these are shares, but they're restricted in that there's a vesting period usually over several years. In here, in the 8K, they say that the RSUs are fully vested within 60 days following the 3rd anniversary of the grant date. So the grant date being September 15th, 2021, 3 years from now, within 60 days, they'll vest. So as we saw in the Form 4, the company granted Kim Rivers an RSU award of those 2,285,178 units. And I won't go into the specifics for Mr. Purnell, but just know that they work the same way. But there is one additional thing happening here. Well, actually, before I get into that, let's talk about why you would do this. Why would you grant RSUs to your senior management? This is a way of aligning management's performance or management's goals with shareholders' goals, or the purpose of the company, to maximize shareholder value. So they've given an award of these restricted shares. Senior management's going to do really well when it comes time to settle up. If the company does poorly and the share price tanks, then the par value of these RSUs is also going to tank. So that's all that is. The one other thing I was going to talk about, so this isn't as straightforward as that. These RSUs, these new agreements, are replacing compensatory warrants that were issued back in September of 2018. So 2018 was 3 years ago, and I haven't gone back to look at this, but my understanding is that this is the old plan that is being settled. In fact, it's just being terminated and canceled, and the company is making cash payments of $2,562,525 to Ms. Rivers and Mr. Purnell, respectively. So that takes care of them under their old plan. And now the company is choosing to align management incentives for the next 3 years under the arrangement we just talked about. All right, apologies for the longer episode. I went down some tangents I didn't mean to. I am once again asking for feedback. If there's anything I can be doing better, please drop a comment below. You can also reach me on Twitter at MJMarkets. My Patreon is patreon.com/MaryJaneMarkets. Though at this time, all I ask is that you help me spread the word. Please share this episode out with any like-minded investors that you know of, any places where they might be, Twitter, Reddit. It will go a long way in helping grow this show. Thank you.